Okay, we're very, very close right now. It's preparing it. It's not on yet, that's why. All right. I'm seeing it load up right now.
Good morning and welcome to today's town hall, sponsored by the Lancaster County Democratic Party. I'm Harvey Smith and I will be your host today. Yesterday, we lost an icon of justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let's begin today with a few moments of silence. Today's listening session is centered around the questions the African American community has asked of its elected officials. With us this morning are 4 candidates running for representatives of the House of Representatives and the South Carolina state government. Mo Brown is seeking the U.S. congressional seat in District 5. Ram Mamadov is running for South Carolina Senate in District 16. Keith Gray is seeking South Carolina House seat for District 45. And Mandy Powers-Norell is seeking re-election for the South Carolina House District 44. We appreciate that all of you have sent us your questions. We will do our best to get to as many of those questions as possible within the 1 hour time frame that we have this morning. Also, please feel free to type in your questions in the YouTube chat box this morning. We will try to address them as well as time allows. Overall, the candidates will be listening very closely to your concerns and how best to address them. To start, let's hear from our 4 candidates. First up is Mo Brown. Welcome, Mo.
Harvey, thank you for the introduction and great to be here today. Ron, Keith, Mandy, great to see you as always. Really happy to be able to share this conversation that's needed for the African American community. As we know, we have a lot of challenges in our country right now. There's a lot of crises on multiple fronts in which we need to be addressing. But as Harvey said, my name is Mo Brown and I'm running for Congress here in the 5th District against Republican Ralph Norman. And it's time for a change. We need new leadership that can guide our country in a way that reflects all of us, every single one of us, and increase the net and get more people into the safety net that is America. We are great. We never stop being great, but we got to be better. And it's on each and every one of us to hold our country accountable and make sure that we're doing our part to ensure that happens. And so today we'll talk about the African American community and what we plan to do to ensure that as we move forward. So I look forward to this conversation and we'll keep it rolling from there. So go to moforcongress.com, look me up and support our campaign, and we'll keep moving towards November 3rd to get a victory. Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you, Mo. Now let's hear from Ram Mamadov. Ram, good morning.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. Thank you, my fellow Democrats. Good afternoon, my dear neighbors, fellow residents. My name is Ram Mamadov, South Carolina State Senate candidate. I'm a resident of Indian Land, Lancaster County. You don't wake up one morning and say to yourself, I want to run for office. My decision to run for office was brewing in me for a while. When I took my kids to school, when I drove on 521 and 160, when it took me longer and longer to drive to work because of traffic. I'm looking at the state of our great state and I say we've had enough. After 25 years of single-party dominance in South Carolina, we are in the bottom 10 in most nationally measured and ranked categories. There is more on the line this election year than ever before. Our health in COVID-19 plans. South Carolina, which is among only few states left that have not adopted Medicaid expansion. Our healthcare cost, which ranks second worst. Our voting performance, third worst. Our safety on the roads, which is ranked the worst in the country. Our safety of women, ranked fifth worst. Our quality of school system in the bottom 10. Starting teacher salary, which is ranked eighth worst. I can go on and on and on. But the question to ask, are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that. So rather than saying change, I commit myself to helping us all do better, live better, and better enjoy our freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And now let's hear from Keith Gray this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I am very honored to be here in this company with these people running for our service to our community. As Ram has mentioned, he gave off a long report card that's really gloomy. I would put one of my kids in suspend them, limit them to their room for the next semester with a report card like that. We've seen neglect of our systems, neglect of our citizens. We have got to move forward. I'm running as a person with a lot of life experience. I've been in the trades, I've been a business owner, and I've been in profession. And what I see that we need are progressive efforts to put finely tuned solutions in place to address the issues that Raman spoke of. So please give us your support and let's move forward, not backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And now let's hear from Mandy Powers-Norell.
Thank you, Harvey, and thank y'all for having me. It's such an honor to be here with Mo and Ram and Keith. It's always a pleasure to be in their company. And as Harvey said, I'm Mandy Powers-Norell, and I've been serving in the South Carolina House of Representatives for the past 8 years, and I'm running for re-election. I'm from Lancaster. I've lived here all my life. My parents were from here. I have really deep roots here. And one of the things that, I was the first in my family to go to college. My parents had both worked at the local mill, and I was able to work there too in order to pay for my education. And I learned so much working at the Springs Mills. We were the world's largest cotton mill there for a while. And my coworkers would come by and they would say, "You have an opportunity. Don't squander your opportunity." And so I did. I worked super hard. I worked so much harder than I would have if I hadn't had their influence in my life. And I got a scholarship to law school and was able to commute to law school every day, living in Lancaster, and finished in just 2.5 years and was second in my graduating class. And I turned down opportunities to work at big firms in big cities because I felt like my calling was to come home to Lancaster and represent my friends and neighbors at home. And when I started doing that, the mills started closing, and I started representing the people I used to work with in screen printing at the Bleachery. I was representing them in bankruptcy, and things were starting to go downhill. We had become overly dependent on a single industry. And I got involved in government, and that's how I came to be ultimately running for the House of Representatives to represent really the people who raised me. And it has been an honor, and probably the greatest honor of my life, doing that for the past 8 years. I hope that I get to continue to do that for another term, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Our first question for today is for Keith and for Mandy. What strategies are you willing to use to encourage the approval of Medicaid expansion for South Carolina? Okay, Keith, let's start with you.
Well, I was going to defer to Mandy, being an experienced legislator, to let us know what means we have, since this is ultimately the governor's call And unfortunately, our state doesn't trust its citizens enough to allow us a statewide ballot initiative. We can only propose and vote in localized county or municipality initiatives. So what we're going to have to do, I mean, my immediate plan is to get elected and increase the number of Democratic progressive legislators in the House, help Rahman get elected and help flip our Senate, and certainly, of course, help Mandy get reelected. And then we'll have to push on and build toward the 2022 governor. So as far as what we can do immediately, Mandy, please enlighten us.
Well, as Keith said, it's really an issue for the governor. If the governor says that he or she wants the federal funds for healthcare expansion, then immediately we get them. We've already given up many years of opportunity for 100% match, but it's still a really good deal, and we could accept those just like that if the governor would accept them. Now, there are other avenues that we have tried in the legislature. Several years ago, the Democrats tried to force the governor, it was then Governor Haley, to accept the Medicaid expansion funds. Had we done that then, we would have had a $1.8 billion economic impact immediately to our state and created 44,000 new jobs. Those jobs would have increased state taxes by $105 million. Instead, the vote went along party lines, and the federal health care funds were denied, which is really dumb because that's our money. You know, it's money we've already paid in our federal taxes. And to refuse to accept your money back is like refusing to accept your federal income tax refund, because it's your money. Nobody does that. Nobody says, federal government, no, you can have my income tax refund. And they don't do it because it doesn't make sense. And what we did in South Carolina did not make sense by not accepting those federal funds. Now, a lot of states that initially turned down the federal funds have now gone back and accepted them because they see the repercussions. You know, hospitals were getting something called PIP funds for underserved and disadvantaged people, the people who use the emergency rooms, and for basic health care. And hospitals were able to offset their losses with those PIP funds. But those PIP funds were taken to fund the federal healthcare expansion. And so so we've seen a lot of our rural hospitals close. And as we see that, I think that South Carolina is starting to change, and we may move in a direction where we'll have a governor who will accept those funds soon. It can't be soon enough, though.
Thank you, Mandy. And thank you, Keith. Our next question is for Mo, Keith, and Mandy. What needs to happen to increase the job market in central and southern Lancaster County and in your area? What role are you willing to assume? And let's begin with Mo.
The dreaded mute button. It starts with planning and working at the South Carolina Department of Commerce. You learn exactly how that works through not only the state but through the country. And Lancaster has had tremendous success in the northern portion of the county, recruiting jobs to that area. But to your question, to the central and southernmost part, again, goes back to planning. You got to understand exactly what are your strengths and weakness of those areas and what industry matches up with recruiting them to that. And so once you understand that, you can start putting a plan in place to make sure that, one, the workforce is reflective of the industries that you want to recruit to the area. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you have the infrastructure ready in place. So if you have a company that's coming in that loves the community that they have, the workforce seem to be trained up in the way that they need to produce whatever widget that they may have. But when it comes to the site or building that they need, it takes, you can say, a year to get the utilities to that site, or that the building is not necessarily up to par with the ceiling heights, then they will have to pass on that community because the infrastructure is not in place. And so we got to make sure that we have our utilities at the site-ready industrial parks that is going to recruit the companies that reflects the community. And on the education side, where we see the gaps we need to make sure that our technical colleges, our universities are training our students to be able to fill those roles as these companies are looking for locations to enter. For as my role and how I plan on helping with that is working with each and every one of these individuals that's here on this call in an elected capacity to help create that vision for not only Lancaster, but for the whole 5th district of how we're going to recruit companies that reflect our district and also where we want to go. So plan. It's not a year-by-year thing. This is a 5-10-year plan and making sure that we're executing as we move forward. And then 2, from a federal level, making sure that we have funding going into the infrastructure that is needed to recruit these companies here.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
And Keith, will you provide your insight, please? Certainly.
We have a very interesting situation here in Lancaster County. And it's the fact we're almost overdeveloped in the northern part, and we need the development pushed to the southern part where we have good citizens needing jobs, and it's a long commute from Kershaw to Indian Land. I would like to see more emphasis and encourage, because this is ultimately under the county's control, encourage a way of tiered incentives. I have my feelings on economic incentives. I believe rational, planned development is necessary, but it needs to be planned, and we don't need to give away the farm on those initiatives. And my thought is that we would encourage, from the state level as well as encourage our fellow legislators and at the county council, and to have a tiered system. If you will come down to the central and south part of the county, we'll give you some nice incentives. If you want to build up in Indian Land, well, let us know when to show up for the ribbon cutting, and here's a bill for the infrastructure. Now, the rest but at the other part of it is the education of our citizens. I'm a big proponent on trade and technical training. As a former union training director, apprenticeship programs serve both the employee and the industry, and those trained employees make it a very attractive place to locate to. Companies that I think Mo could confirm this. If an area has a good technical training infrastructure, it's going to be more attractive. So
that's correct.
Thank you. So the education and giving people an opportunity to utilize their skills, because so many people are better suited for the trades. And Lord knows we need a good plumber and electrician, especially for building those buildings and for running that equipment. So I would really promote education and training and making sure that those kind of programs are available, as well as we have to have a healthy workforce. If people are sick, chronically ill, they are not going to be able to be productive. So we need to expand the Medicaid. We need to try to get those hospitals. We lost, the last count I heard, we've lost 6 rural hospitals across the state for the lack of those funds that Mandy referred to. We need to get that money back. So health, education, and we'll get there.
Thank you, Keith. Mandy, will you provide your vision and your insight as well, please?
Thank you, Harvey. you know, South Carolina has been pretty successful statewide at recruiting businesses and industry into our state. But that does not equal, you know, success in all of our areas. There are parts of South Carolina that are suffering tremendously, and Lancaster County has a very unique situation, as Keith alluded to, partly due to the shape of our county. We have that long panhandle that's next to Charlotte and majorly developed areas. And then we have the larger part of the county that is more rural and more people who, you know, worked at the mill that I talked about, that, you know, we were you know, really, we put all our eggs in one basket for a generation or two in Lancaster. And so when job development credits are given by the Department of Commerce, they're given based on the average wage in a county, not in a region. And so, as Keith alluded to, we've got a situation where in the Panhandle, the average wage is a good bit higher than the average wage in the southern part of the county. So we in the southern part of the county lose out on some job development credits. We lose out on some incentives that would be offered from the state because we're judged by the average of the county as a whole. I would like to see us. I would like to see, you know, us treated regionally because, you know, different parts of Lancaster County are very, very different in their needs and in their people's income and need for training, for infrastructure, and for development. And as Mo alluded, you know, there are businesses and industry that will come in and say, hey, we need to find a place, we need a workforce. But if our people aren't trained for the jobs that are available, we're going to miss out on that, where we might have everything else in place. You know, where South Carolina is considered to be a business friendly state. It's the tax incentives are tremendous and something that I think we probably ought to be looking at, because my colleagues or my counterparts in North Carolina say there is no way we can compete with South Carolina in what you give away and to these businesses. And in reality, a lot of times that is regular working people giving away their own money to recruit industry and business into South Carolina, probably at a higher rate than we would have to get that business here. But our surrounding states don't offer anywhere close to what we offer. So that's another reason that as statewide we've been able to recruit. I would suggest that, you know, an educated workforce, good quality of life, a place where people are going to want to move to, those things could be far more persuasive incentives than the monetary incentives that we're giving at such high rates right now. But one thing we have to do is we have to have a workforce that is trained and ready to go when the businesses of today come to look for a place to locate. And skills training is something that we have to focus on in order to recruit these jobs.
Can I expand a little bit, particularly on incentives, since this is really my expertise. So when you're thinking about incentives and how you use them to recruit companies in the Southeast in general, most of the states are pretty competitive. North Carolina, as you alluded to, they're not. They have a sense of they don't need to, and there's a strategy that they have that where they've created a quality of place, whether you're up in the Research Triangle or down here in Charlotte, which has a banking, basically the banking capital of the country. They have created a term that's used in economic development, a quality of place that recruits companies to these locations because they do have all these criteria that's required for them to be a successful business. Because what the business is going to look at is their bottom line. How can you affect the bottom line and make sure that they're increasing their profit margin by the incentives that you can bring to the table? And so that first 5 years that a company is putting a facility in whatever location that they are, that's where they're going to have the most cost and likely not to be as profitable because they're paying for the facility that they have. So incentives come into play to try to mitigate those things. But again, as you increase the quality of the place that you have, the less incentives that you have to have on the table, because the company is going to say, this is the best business decision. I know I got a qualified workforce. I have a business community that is supporting me and is going to be responsive to the needs that we have. In addition to that, I know that the people here are going to be happy and healthy, as Keith alluded to, and if they're happy and healthy, that means they're more productive, which means less cost to me as a company, because we're not having people missing days. We're not having people calling out of work, people that's not energized and enthusiastic about coming in. And so if you have all those things checked off, a company is going to feel way more safe to put that investment in there. So Keith said we're in the catch-22 right now, which is a good point. So you got to work those incentives to create the quality of place, and then the quality of place will make the reduction of the incentive happen. And so that's how we work together to make sure that we accomplish that. And I think South Carolina has did a good blend of it, but we got to continue to be better to ensure that our rural communities are getting the industries that support good paying jobs as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Mo, and thank you, Keith, for your view on this topic. This question is for all four of you. South Carolina continues to lag in the ratings for overall preschool through 12th grade in our educational system. Please list the steps that you envision as necessary to consistently increase our educational system's ratings. And Mo, this time let's begin with you.
Well, we got to be honest with each other first. We got to see our issues and call them what it is. With COVID going throughout the country right now, and we're back into a place where we're trying to get kids educated, we see the gaps that we have. It's amplified and magnified on a major level. First thing we got to do is get rural broadband out to these rural areas, get broadband out to these rural areas to ensure that our students have the ability to virtual learn in this uncertain climate that we have with COVID, and we don't know exactly when this is going to end. It's unfortunate that we're in a position right now where kids are not safe as they should be. Staff is not safe as they could be because of the lack of response from a federal level to ensure that everyone is safe. So we got to get rural broadband out to these communities to ensure that our low income folk have the opportunity to learn virtually right now. In addition to that, we got to make it more lucrative for folks to go into the teaching profession. The teachers hold, children are the future. That saying is said a lot, but guess who teach these children? The teachers. And if they're building them up, we need to make sure that they're being compensated at a rate that is reflective of the contribution they're making to our overall community. So we need to make sure that they're getting paid. In addition to that, what I said earlier about how we training and educating our students, as we have a plan that is in place, we need to make sure that our education system is reflecting the needs of our communities as well, that once you're educated, you're going into an industry that's going to support you and be able to give back to the community. And so we got to be more collective in our thought process to ensure that what we are educating is actually going to benefit that student to be able to go into society and be able to achieve. I also think that we need to pay for K through 14 is the saying that you hear. So that's the the associate degrees that you could potentially get, particularly in the trades. And as baby boomers are retiring and going out of the workforce right now, we need to have a more emphasis on trades and make sure that we have our electricians, our plumbers, our machinists, our welders, and each one of these can not only be able to get employed with these companies, but they also can start small businesses and have ownership of those and continue to be able to utilize the skills that they learn from a trade to bring in multiple forms of revenue. So all these things we should be thinking about, they all interconnected, and these are things we should do right now. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Mo. Ram, from your perspective, will you share your vision and views?
Absolutely, thank you. Mo outlined very well. To start with, we opened up when the state opened up with no plan, no vision, putting at high risk everybody, our children, our educators. Well, let me add to what Mo said. There is no education. He mentioned there is no education without educators, period. There's nothing else. You can have your kid sitting in a Library of Congress, surrounded by the wisdom of the universe. And if we don't have an educator guiding that kid, there's nothing that kid will learn. So let me show you demonstrate how one step in the right direction can explode into so many benefits in so many areas. As Mo said, our educators, our teachers, they're underpaid. Nobody can argue with it. They are extremely underpaid in our state. So if we raise teachers' salaries, we will attract and retain better teachers. Better teachers will produce better students, better prepared for advanced education, vocational careers. Then students graduate into better jobs, better universities, get better pay, and have better futures. Families moving to South Carolina will seek better schools, better school districts, and should be willing to pay more for a home. And paying more for a home has incredible benefits for our current and future homeowners. This in turn brings better growth. So it is a daisy chain of events that keeps on giving because of just one extremely very important step, and that is to raise salaries and provide better schooling. So if we want to take care of our children, first of all, we got to have to take care of our educators, our teachers. That's the number one priority. That's it. There's nothing else. Thank you.
Ram, thank you very much. Keith, around education, will you share with us your vision as well?
Well, as Raman mentioned, first and foremost, we have to attract good teachers and we have to keep them. We need to reduce the class sizes so that the teachers can know their students well enough to be able to address the individual issues that come up. We need to add teachers' aides back into the classroom, which would work as an effective ratio reduction. We need to, besides the basic salaries, we need to encourage through bonuses and all for advanced professional development and for mentorship. As I said, I'm a strong believer in apprenticeship programs where the experienced journeyman teaches the young apprentice, brings them along, speeds up their development safely. And this is an invaluable tool in dealing with all the soft skills that a teacher requires. I'm a product of both public and private education. So I've seen the good and the bad on both sides. We need to make sure through sufficient, sustainable, equitable financing that our school infrastructures and our student and our teachers have the resources. We have got to get away from this philosophy that through the inevitable ups and downs of an economy and ups and downs of a state budget income, that we've got to get away from this. Okay, things are tight, let's cut education. And then turning around when things start picking up, oh, we got a bonus. Let's cut taxes instead of trying to make up for what we had to reduce during the tight times. So I would like to see the funding there. I think the whole funding system in the state needs a really close reexamination. We need to get funding done to bring those areas that have been neglected so poorly in the rural areas and certain counties. A student shouldn't have to depend on living in the right zip code to get the proper education. this has got to be addressed. We're going to have to realize that people that live in the really good, prosperous parts of the state need to help out their fellow citizens and help develop them. As Raman very well showed, there is a cascading effect. Better you improve that county, the more attractive it's going to be for good paying jobs. And therefore, in time, it will work out. And they'll be at a level that they'll be self-funding. But we've got to help them. We've got to help them out. We've got to address those issues. And one other thing, I do believe with the education that we need to address what in certain areas is a school to prison pipeline. Sheriff Lott down in Richland County has done some great work on this, and and we need more resources and counselors and mental health specialists and less law enforcement. Now, admittedly, there's some schools that have trouble, that have issues, and that we still might need a law enforcement officer on the premises, but that shouldn't be the go-to solution for disciplinary problems or emotional problems in the schools. That's not law enforcement's job. So again, more resources in the schools, more money spent in the right areas with the right priorities. And I am really, really against public citizens, public monies going to private schools. I see a place for the public charter schools, but if it's a private institution, I feel it's unconstitutional for my money to go. I am proud and happy to pay taxes going to the public school systems in this state. I do not have a child, grandchild, or great-grandchild in this state, but I want to spend that money on the public system. I am infuriated by what Governor McMaster is trying to do with public money and divert it from our public schools into private schools. So I'll stop now before I get into a real rant on that one.
Keith, thank you for your passion around that issue. Mandy, will you share your vision?
Hey. Mute myself and I forget that I have. It's a nationwide problem that the way schools are funded nationally is completely upside down. It depends on how much property tax you pay as to how much funding goes to your local schools. So people in poor areas have less funding for their schools, and people in wealthy areas have more funding for their schools. These there are some amazing schools in South Carolina, and the administration, the educators are so proud of these institutions, and they've asked, like several have asked me to come and speak at their schools, and I go and I speak, and I see carpeted floors and these campuses that look like college campuses, and not regular college campuses, like private college campuses, and and independent violin lessons and things like this. And then I go to schools in other areas and the ceiling's falling down and they still have the old asbestos up, and it is so incredibly sad, where my colleagues are just rejoicing at the wonderful opportunities at some of these schools in wealthy areas. I just get sadder and sadder because the way we are funding our schools is upside down. The kids who need this funding the most are the least likely to get it in their school systems, and we need to revamp. I mean, I know they do it this way throughout the country, but South Carolina should be a leader in revamping the way schools are funded so that it's distributed on a per student basis. And while I'm on that subject, per pupil funding in South Carolina is so low that it's even below the minimum we have set by statute to require how the way schools would be funded in South Carolina, and that is just unconscionable. You know, our Supreme Court has opined that the only obligation of our school system is to give a minimally adequate education, but yet they don't even get the minimal funding that's required by law to give that education. So is it any wonder that we're ranked low? Now, Act 388 caused the problem of funding to be exacerbated, especially in border counties like Lancaster, because Act 388 took away some of the property tax money that was going to schools and replaced it with sales tax money. But in border counties, a lot of times when you have more shopping opportunities in the other state, people will spend their money in the other state and do their living and use of services in this state. So like in Lancaster, a lot of times people will go shopping in North Carolina, and we don't get that sales tax in Lancaster to go to our schools. And that further hurts our schools. So Act 388 hurt Lancaster County and other border counties disproportionately to other areas throughout the state. And I also just want to echo what Mo said about rural broadband. When kids go home and they're told to do their homework on the internet, even, you know, without the pandemic, it was a problem. The pandemic has really just shined a light on what a problem it is. But we have kids coming back to school the next day without their homework. And that just increases the achievement gap between the haves and the have-nots. And after a while, kids who grow up in middle class, lower middle class homes start to say, well, school is not my thing. School is not for me. And public school is the great equalizer. It's the promise that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can achieve anything. But in this day and time, the odds of a child from a lower socioeconomic background being able to really take advantage of that great equalizer and the opportunities that public school is designed to give them are much lower than they were a generation ago because of policies and just situations like the rural broadband situation that increases that gap between the haves and the have-nots, the ones who are set up to achieve in public school and the ones who have every obstacle thrown in their path. So we've got to do all we can to eliminate those obstacles.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you very much. Yes. We know there's lots of conversation that has taken place regarding infrastructure. So this is a question for all four candidates this morning. What is your view, and what do you intend to do in regard to the infrastructure issues in our local communities? And I'd like to begin with Ron.
Thank you, Harvey. That is a really great question. So, Harvey, let me start with, as part of the infrastructure, let me start with our roads. Like you, I drive the roads of South Carolina with my precious cargo in the car, my family. Your eyes and mine see nothing but crumbling roads and crumbling and dangerous roads, substandard bridges, inadequate safety on our roads. What we need is intelligent traffic light synchronization to lower the danger and allow traffic to flow better. As you drive on 521, you can see if you're standing on and waiting for a green light to turn, as your light turns green, next one right away turns red. So it's stop and go, stop and go. What we need is intelligent traffic light to start with. Second, and this is a must, not nice to have, it is a must. We must have a 5 feet wide accessible pathways, at least on one side on arterial or collector roads. Did you know that South Carolina exceeds the national obesity rate substantially because people don't feel safe walking or cycling anywhere? It's not because we are lazy or we eat junk food. Absolutely not. It's because it is not safe for us to walk. Recently, a mile away from me, where I live, on 160, a teenager was killed at night. It was like 10:30 at night, walking on 160, coming back from work, where he was working on a fast food chain. It is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Second, infrastructure means providing internet access, as Mo mentioned before, be it for education, communication, or for business. No county or area should be without internet access. 38% of rural South Carolina today is without Wi-Fi. And we started school. I wonder how children not attending school, not physically being in school, and my children are one of them, but studying at home, how do they do that in rural areas, in those areas where they don't have a Wi-Fi? It is unacceptable. I consider internet as a public utility in the same category as power, water, or other services. This utter failure of the current system, it poses, and I said that before, it poses an imminent threat to our quality of our life. We need leadership with aggressive plan to build our infrastructure, a plan that will bring investments to support residents and local businesses.
Ram, thank you. Thank you very much. Mo, will you share with us your vision around this?
Absolutely. Ron, you did a fantastic job there. You hit on most of the key points that we need to be addressing. But infrastructure is just like education. The more you invest into it, the more return on investment that you will get. And it goes back to cost. You know, if you look at our roads, you look at our bridges, it is not up to par. And if I'm a company that I'm trying to recruit to South Carolina, and I'm having to take into consideration the costs that my trucks may have when they're moving back and forth the widgets that we're trying to distribute all across the country, all across the world, that becomes a real figure that's in consideration. So not only with these companies that we see, let's talk about the folks that's living paycheck to paycheck. And if they hit a pothole and they lose a tire that costs, you know, $100, $200, $300 to replace, and that budget tightens it up for them, you know, that is a cost that could have been mitigated if we had better infrastructure, better roads. As far as the broadband, I mean, you know, Ron, he called it out. It is a utility. And the Rural Broadband Act that our own congressman here, Representative Jim Clyburn, is pushing through right now to address the rural broadband issue that we have not only in this state, but throughout this country, to ensure that it is a utility, because it is the key to education, not only for our students, but even for our citizens who's looking to better enhance their living. You know, go to get a associate degree or get a degree online. And if they can't do that in these rural areas, again, they're being cut off to an opportunity to make themselves better, which will increase their livelihood, which will increase their life. So all this stuff is interconnected, and infrastructure along with education are essential to move this state, this district, the state, and this country forward to compete in the shrinking world that we see today. If we want to recruit more jobs back to the United States, if we want to continue to enhance the opportunities for the folks who have not been included in the American dream with the proper resources, we have to invest in infrastructure. If elected on November 3rd, I will be working across the aisle to ensure that we get an infrastructure bill passed, because it is essential. We cannot wait. And the more that we wait, the more that we're going to lose the opportunity to continue to lead the world in so many ways that we have throughout this country over the last century.
Thank you, Mo. Mandy, will you add your views to this topic as well?
Yes, and many of mine echo the ones that you've heard, but I just want to point out, we have in South Carolina the 4th largest state maintained roadway system in the country, and one of the lowest gas taxes and methods of funding the maintenance of that roadway system. So because of that, even with the recent increase in gas tax, we still have one of the very lowest in the country. And so our roads and bridges have been neglected for a full 30 years or more. We're starting to make some changes in that arena, and to make some much needed repairs that are long overdue. That comes with its own set of problems, because so many lanes are closed and all that for maintenance and improvements. but it's going to take a while to see the changes that will come from that legislation that we passed several years ago. We're already seeing some, but it's the to repair that level of neglect is going to take a very, very long time. Rural broadband, I could not agree more. The co-ops are looking at that as well. You know, the co-ops brought electricity to our rural areas back 75 years ago. My dad didn't have electricity or running water when he was growing up, and the co-ops came, and because of the co-ops, he got electricity, and it changed the trajectory of his family. And that is so important. The co-ops are now saying, you know, people want broadband just like they wanted electricity 75 years ago. It is that essential to the way that we live now. And before I well, and yeah, before I ran for office, I was a municipal attorney. I've been a municipal attorney for 22 years, representing small governments. And one thing that we often forget when we talk about infrastructure is the infrastructure maintained by our small governments and our local governments, and infrastructure that's in the ground that they don't think about much and we don't think about much. But we have water and sewer systems that are so old. They were originally installed with terracotta pipe. Terracotta is made from earth, and earth returns to earth. And so we have big holes in sewer pipes. We have big holes in water pipes. We have some terracotta pipe that has never been mapped, and we don't even know where it leads. Our water and sewer systems in this state are in desperate need of repair. When a municipality has a sewer spill, it will often result in a fish kill, which is just a large dead zone in a body of water. It has a tremendous impact to our environment, which then impacts our quality of life and our health. And we have to start supporting our local governments much better than we have in the past. State government has often looked at municipalities and said, basically, well, that's your problem if you have a water and sewer issue. But these municipalities do not have the funding to improve their water and sewer systems to the level that is necessary to protect our health and to protect our environment and to keep that infrastructure running in the way that it should and to attract businesses. We've lost many potential business candidates because we didn't have the water capacity to provide to them, because that's one thing they always ask for if that's the area that they're going to need in their manufacturing. So I think that we need to give a lot more support to our municipalities in their own infrastructure plans.
Thank you, Mandy. And Keith, will you add your voice to this topic about infrastructure?
Well, I'll have to say that we have a very united course on these issues, and Mo, Raman, and Mandy have touched on many, many specifics. And I think I perhaps would like to address just one or two things. Until we have better roads, until the capacity is built up, and we have to look at the economic status of many of our citizens in the southern part of the county, we need to be looking for some creative transportation solutions to getting potential employees from the central and south part of this county up to the north part where the jobs are right now. Ideally, we will get those jobs developed in the south and central areas. But again, the infrastructure, we have to be attractive by having an educated workforce. So we have to address these issues with the educational system. The broadband, oh my Lord, did this pandemic ever bring out the weakness of depending on what ends up in these rural areas as either non-existent broadband or controlled by local monopolies? I mean, it's an effective monopoly if you've only got one cable company. So I like the way it's been worded. This should be a utility provided for. It's one of those fundamental things in this day and age that the broadband should be treated and managed by the government our local governments, like the sewer systems, like the water supply, and made sure that every citizen, just as they have a right to clean water, has the right to broadband, to take care of their education, to take care of their job. I work from home. I'm a remote worker in IT. Right here in town, I live downtown Lancaster, just about the same distance off Main Street Mandy does on the other side. And I get dropouts all the time, and that's just not acceptable. The co-ops are doing a great job in the south part of our county, and we need to enable them. And then it gets to the healthcare. There is a need to expand our healthcare infrastructure. We have seen so much corporatizing of the healthcare system that, and it's for profit. And when they're taking a loss on one of these small rural hospitals or urgent care centers, guess what happens? They cut staff and finally they shut it down. So we have to step up on that. And we need these things rebuilt in some cases and expanded for the health of our citizens so they're productive. And you can't be healthy if you're you can't be happy if you're unhealthy. So everything that my fellow candidates are talking about, I'm totally in line with. Some of us might have just slightly different takes on how to get where we want, but we certainly all support the benefit of our private citizens over the profits of some very profitable industries. They're entitled to profit. The shareholders are entitled to a reasonable return on their investment. But it does, when there is excessive, then it needs to go back into the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Harvey, can I add something real quick?
Please do, Mo.
I just want to really draw attention to everything that we're talking about today, whether it's infrastructure, education, healthcare. It's all interconnected. This notion that we can look at one of these issues in a silo, it's not really smart. We got to start thinking of these things holistically, from a municipality, from a county to a state to a national level, and really be thoughtful how we're addressing each piece of this, because it makes up a whole. And the more we invest in each one of these areas, the more that we ensure that people are not getting sick. That means that they can go to work, they can go get their education. That also means there's less burden on our healthcare as costs. That means premiums goes down. So all these things connect together. And so we got to continue to make sure that we're looking at it in a complete way as we continue to move forward. I just wanted to say that because I would just listen to everyone and all the connective tissue that we're talking about at each one of these issues. And we must emphasize this as elected leaders, or inspiring elected leaders as we move forward through this process. And then when we're in office, making sure that we're working in that same type of way.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you for adding to the insight and the vision and the wisdom of all of you today, for what you have seen and what you're willing to do for our state in South Carolina. Everyone, that's really all the time we have for us being together today. Thank you for watching and thank you for participating. We will be posting a video of today's session on the Lancaster County Democratic Party Facebook and YouTube pages. Please feel free to watch it and also share it with your friends, your family, and your neighbors. I'd like to provide a reminder to everyone. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. The deadline to register for online voting is Sunday, October 4th. The deadline for registering for mail to vote needs to be postmarked by Monday, October 5th. The deadline to register for in-person voting is Friday, October 2nd. And the deadline to request a ballot for mail-in voting must be received by Friday, October 30th. Again, I want to thank each and every candidate. You've given up your time, your energy, everything that you have. We, as members of the public, really appreciate your willingness to stand out, stand up, and speak out for all of us. Thank you, and thank you to our audience for participating today.